Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Attacked by a Poltergeist by Aislinn 1541. It was March 18th, 2016, 2:15 a.m. I couldn't forget this date and time if I tried. It was a normal night until I attempted to read the tarot cards. As I centered myself and channeled energy from all around me, I suddenly was filled with dread like I had never felt before. It started in the base of my neck and seemed to flood into me completely. Ignoring the feeling, I reached for the cards and was actually shocked by them. Thinking maybe I was just too upset to read them, I turned to music, but it didn't make me feel like I usually did. But then, a very short time later, there was a whisper in my ear telling me, "You know what this is." I instantly grabbed my athame and channeled all the energy I could to shove the blade down to the floor. As I did, on my left rose up the darkest figure I have ever seen in my life. It actually blocked the mirror behind it, stopping the reflection from the lamp at the other end of the hall. Absolute terror filled me. I've had run-ins with spirits before, but not like this. This felt like pure evil. I did the first thing that came to mind as it bolted so fast I could barely follow it back to the back of the house. I lit some white sage. I live in a trailer, so I cleansed the front rooms and then started down the hall. I had to get to my 13-year-old in the next room, and as soon as I opened the door, he jumped to his feet and began to panic. He too could actually feel the evil from this thing in our trailer. Giving him the athame, I continued casting my spell, and we worked our way back to the back of the trailer. There was still no reflection in the mirror. Having this thing cornered, we continued trying to fight it. My son placed his hand upon my shoulder, pushing me all the energy he could into me to help. Never in my entire life have I seen something black twist and contort like this thing did. I can't forget this. I wish I could. But I look back at the sudden surge of energy to find my grandfather, whom I've never met, standing behind my son, with his hand upon his shoulder as well. I'm not kidding. I could see him as plain as day, yet I could see through him at the same time. But he was there. Turning back and completing the spell, this thing twisted with its mouth open in a silent scream. I'm so glad I couldn't hear it. And then we watched as it sank into the floor. I cleansed the house 3 times over the next few days and was scared to death to try to channel again. I have no idea what that thing was. I chalked it up to maybe being a poltergeist. I truly pray that no one has to face anything like this. I cannot explain the depth of pure evil that came off of that thing. Thankfully, I've since moved out of that trailer. Repressed Memory Haunting Me After 15 Years by Chinchillandrina. Until a few days ago, I had no idea that this had actually happened to me. I'm not going to talk about the gruesome indirect circumstances that triggered this to start haunting me in flashbacks, but I'll rather focus on the story itself, how I remember it, and how my cousin who was with me when it happened remembers it. For some context, my cousin and I are the same age. We're both women and currently 25 years old. She's only 5 days younger than me, and her family rented a floor in my parents' house when we were toddlers. So we basically did everything together and spent all our days together until we turned 5, when her family bought an apartment in another city, some 30 kilometers away from the city I lived in. Since we had a very strong connection, almost codependent, it was very difficult for us to get used to not living together. And 2 years later, we have made an agreement with our parents that we will visit each other each weekend, and during the summer break she will spend 1 week at our place, and I'll spend the other week at their place, and we'll basically exchange like that until the end of the summer break. This has gone on for years. Since we were spending all our free time together, by the time we turned 10 or 11, we had already exhausted all of our adventure ideas in the backyard. Tree climbing, building a treehouse, setting up tents, camping in the backyard, etc. We really needed something new, so we decided to go fishing together every Friday on the river near my house. It's about a 20-minute walk. Now, of course, we had no tools needed for a true fishing experience. We had a butterfly net that we would place in the water, and on a good day, we would catch a dozen tiny fish with it. That was enough for our restaurant game. We would come back home, bake the fish under the sunlight, and then serve it and decorate it in plastic plates that we would later serve to our imaginary customers. We'd done this for weeks and always made sure we were safe while doing it. We never actually got into the river, and that wasn't that difficult since it's a very peaceful neighborhood. We call it the Yellow Bridge. There was usually no one else at the river at the time we were there. But one day, it was different. Very different. How I remember it. A couple of days ago, the memory of this encounter suddenly spilled out in my mind. We were either 10 or 11 years old, and it was a Friday. She was at our place that week, so we took the butterfly net and went fishing on the river. We were alone, sitting under a large willow tree right next to the river. Suddenly a man showed up from nowhere. He was standing a couple of meters away from us, and he had blackish hair with plenty shades of gray, so I'm guessing he was in his late 40s or early 50s. He had a dark blue t-shirt, a little smudged on the collar. He asked us what we were doing, and we said we were fishing. He continued walking back and forth on that part of the shore. Now under the Yellow Bridge, the shore itself is at least 500 meters long. He could have gone anywhere, but he stayed where we were at. Then he came a little closer and we got up. He told us he was having issues with his wife, and we just nodded our heads, trying to avoid the conversation and follow the don't talk to strangers rule. We didn't ask him anything. He took a flip phone out of his pocket and opened it in front of us. "I have to show you my wife," he said. "Okay," we replied. When he found what he was looking for, he came even closer and turned the phone towards us. It was a picture of a completely naked woman sitting in a chair with her legs spread. We just nodded. He then proceeded to show us more pictures, and it was quite clear that this wasn't his wife because the pictures weren't of the same woman. But all of them were naked from head to toe, with their legs spread or in other very suggestive positions, now that I think of it. The quality of the images, the fashion, and the aesthetics could best be described as pornographic content from the 70s. It could be that he took some pictures from an old magazine or had them sent by someone. I remember I looked at my cousin and mouthed, "It's not his wife," and she nodded. "Isn't she beautiful?" he asked. "She is," I replied, and my cousin nodded. We then remembered that we had left our net on the river, so we went back to the willow tree and reached for the net. He was standing there in the same spot as before, looking at his phone. He then showed us a very low-quality picture of two naked men and another naked woman. This picture actually looked like pictures taken with a flip phone camera. "This is me," he said, and pointed at one of the men in the picture. We just nodded and said we had to go home. He then said the words that have been haunting me for days now. "You think my wife is beautiful? She thinks you're beautiful too. She would love to meet you. Come with me to meet her and we can play together." "No, we have to go home," I replied. "You little party breaker. Maybe your friend doesn't want to go home. Come on, I want to play with you," he said and turned to my cousin. "No, I really want to go home," my cousin replied. This is where the details of the memory stop. What I remember next is him giving up and just not being there anymore and leaving, giggling and laughing as we walked away, mocking his voice and his tone on our way back home. But I found it weird that only after so many years have I remembered this situation, and I've brushed it off as a potential dream or false memory. But since his words kept echoing in my head, I called my cousin and described my memory word for word as I've described it here, and she said that it did happen. just slightly different from how I've remembered it. How my cousin remembers it. It happened. All the details are correct, but once she told him she really wanted to go home, he was way too close and we were scared to start running or turn our backs, since we thought he would catch us. So we stayed there for a while and kept pretending like he wasn't there. We played with our catch, the tiny fish in a bucket filled with water, and talked about our fathers who worked in the police. Obviously that was a lie. Her father's a forest ranger and mine works in IT. And how they were so strong they could kill a man with one punch. The man didn't believe our exaggerated story, and he kept walking in circles around us. Not too close, but he did keep an eye on us the entire time. And we waited, and waited, and waited. At one point, he went into the bushes behind us to take a piss. That's when we got up and started running. We ran across the bridge and kept running until we got to the part of the neighborhood where there are lots of houses. When we were already close to my house, I stopped in the middle of the road and said that my legs won't move. So my cousin helped me get down on the side of the road, and we sat there until I felt better. Today I know that what I experienced was a state of shock. Once I felt better, we went back home, threw away the fish, and decided to never go fishing again. We never told this to our parents because we knew what happened had something to... We never told this to our parents because we knew that what had happened had something to do with sex, and at the time we thought that everything related to sex was shameful and shouldn't be talked about. She said she's surprised that I thought it was a dream and that I didn't remember it until now, since I've had such an extreme reaction, and she's had PTSD from that event. Even today, she doesn't go anywhere alone, and is terrified whenever someone mentions the Yellow Bridge. Creeper on My Porch, submitted by Anonymous. Hey Uncle Josh, I'm sending you this footage from my Ring doorbell camera. I'm sending it anonymously. I know you're from the Western New York area, and this just recently happened in the town of Cheektowaga. I'm sure you're familiar with my town. So, as you can see from the video, this creeper came up onto our porch with a mug full of flowers. He's clearly wearing a strange face mask, and we have no idea who it is. He rearranges the flowers and then set them down on our porch and walked away. But then he came back and moved the mug to the other side of our porch before finally walking away and then driving away. We reported this to the police and then checked with our neighbors who didn't have any footage of the vehicle or knew what was going on at our house. But still, this is very unsettling for us. We didn't have any scheduled deliveries. This is certainly not a floral arrangement from a professional flower shop. And at first, we didn't even touch the mug for fear that something was wrong with it. The police told us that they're working on some leads, but we haven't heard anything back yet. We're totally freaked out. We were freaked out when we saw it happening. We have no idea why this guy was dressed up the way he was, why he chose to ring our doorbell with these strange flowers. I mean, there's no explanation at all. It just goes to show you that creepy things happen every single day, in every single neighborhood. Whoever this guy is, he hasn't been back, and I'm hoping he stays away. I'll keep you updated if and when we find out who he is, and what this was all about. Man, this is creepy. The Bad Place by Aussie Red Dog. I got lucky when I scored a pretty damn good job on a remote cattle station in Central Australia. And when I say remote, holy crap, I mean remote. Fair dinkum, it takes a day and a half just to get the mail and a 2-day drive into town. That's how far out I was living. Okay, the cattle station. It's old in Australian standards, as it was built around 1860-something, and the land, well, let's say it's empty of trees, but wild. Maybe over 20-odd thousand acres or more. My job is boundary riding, making sure that the dingo-proof fence is in good nick, as well as the rabbit-proof fence which runs from Central Australia over the border into Western QLD. So, it's effing long. My job is to make sure that the fence is secure, plenty of water for the cattle, a dam I'm speaking of, and I see mobs of roos each and every morning sharing the dam with the cattle, and to make sure there are no dingoes about, or those pesky bloody rabbits that destroy the land. The blokes I work with are the local indigenous, and are bloody great blokes, great workers to share your billy and damper with. There is one area my indigenous mates refuse to go to. It's this glorious watering hole, but they refuse to go anywhere near it. Why, I asked my best mate Tommy one day. Tommy's not his real name. But, he said, there's very bad spirits there. No good. Very bad place. Elders warn us not to go swimming there or she'll take you. Who? Who are we talking about? Yina Pa. Yina Pa? Devil girl, was all he said. I left it at that, but I was to witness this Yina Pa, the devil girl. It was roughly about a month back when this strange incident occurred. It was in the low 40s, bloody hot, as we traveled along the fence line, repairing this, shooting that when it came near 5 o'clock and it started getting cooler. I knew we couldn't get back to the station until midday the next day, as the horses needed resting. Tommy started getting nervous about something, then told me we were in Yina Pa's territory. We have to be aware, Butta. Not good country here. Plenty of tucker, though, but not good country. That night we had a freshly killed kangaroo, which is good for you, and then we set up camp. We had a yarn about this and that, who's winning the footy and what have you. Then we settled down to sleep. Now, I'm not sure to this day if I dreamt this or it was real, but whatever the hell it was, it scared me badly. I was sleeping in my swag, Tommy was snoring away, when the old bladder called out to me. Wee-wee time, wee-wee time, so I got out of my swag, groggily I should add, and started peeing. It was a stunning night with the black velvet sky sprinkled with stars as well as the Milky Way streaking across it. If you want to see such amazing night skies, spend the night in the Australian desert and you're in for a fucking good treat. Anyway, I stood there peeing away happily when she came out of the darkness. I can't say she was human, nor can I say she wasn't. I have no bleeding idea who the hell she was, but she came out on all fours, naked as the day she was born. Something about that. This creature, it stunned me. And then a voice spoke. It was Tommy. Back up slowly, Butta. No sudden movement. That's Yini Pa. Be quiet. I did what I was told and stood looking at this girl creature. Like I said, I had no idea what she is or was, whatever. But I stayed there as she made her way back into the darkness. I'll tell you one thing. I didn't sleep that night, and we both left very early the next day. I never went back to that camping spot and still have no idea what the bloody hell Tommy and I saw that night. An old elder of the tribe came to me later and asked me to describe what I saw. I did, and he shook his head. He said that I was very lucky that she didn't take me. I have no idea what he meant by take me, but yeah, I've had a lot of strange experiences in my life, but that one takes the cake. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like to hear narrated on this channel or my podcast, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification button for every time that I upload. Follow me on social media. Links to that are in the description below. And if you'd like to support this channel even further, find me on Patreon. There's a link for that down below as well. And check out my storefront on tpublic.com. Get yourself some Uncle Josh swag. Campfire Crew stuff. Totally approved. You'll look great in it. I'd also like to thank my latest patrons. Zombies Rule, thank you very much for your support. As well as, this is my favorite name in a long time. Thanks to my new patron, Non-binary luggage-stealing chupacabra. Oh, and I've got a great t-shirt design for chupacabras coming up. Harkens back to the Edge of the Unknown radio show. Look for that there. Again, the link for my TeePublic store in the description below. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.